there's some big highlights in those 49 games so far. Can you pick out any?
Getting punched in the face.
Oh,
Good one. Yeah.
That wasn't a highlight. Was it sore?
Metal cheek. It's fine.
You've got a metal cheek.
Metal
So I
cheek.
got a metal cheek, but if I ever got punched, it
Is
was
it-
sore.
Which one is it?
It is left cheek. Yeah. The one, if you ever notice, if I squint, this eye doesn't actually shut up well, so it looks a bit like.
What are your thoughts on this year?
Really exciting. I think, like loads of test rugby, which is good and like massive opportunity. Obviously for the guys going on the tour in the summer to put their hand up for selection. Like obviously over the last couple of years the squad's been pretty well established, but like a lot of new faces coming in for the summer. So it'll be really interesting to see who puts their hands up on this tour, and then hopefully be pretty competitive in November and into the Six Nations.
It's the official Scottish Rugby Podcast with Caroline and Mossy, and for this week's episode we are delighted to be joined by Jamie Ritchie. Jamie, who,
hello.
I mean, a man who you earned your first cap for Scotland on the very tour that you're about to earn your 50th cap for Scotland.
Yeah, potentially in the game that I didn't play in on the last one. So 6 years ago now we went to Canada, USA and Argentina. It was my first tour, and made my first cap against Canada.
2018, wasn't it?
21 years old.
21 years old.
Young.
Is it vivid? Is it a vivid? It's obviously a vivid memory, but in terms of that period in your life, is it a vivid memory?
Yeah, I remember really vividly. I remember having a pretty good season and then coming into the tour like excited about getting the opportunity to play and then being named in the team for the first game. And I remember afterwards I was rooming with Rory Jackson, and I just remember like not wanting to go to my bed, like because it's
the
like
night
Before your first cap?
no on the day the day I got my cap, because it was just such an awesome day, and you keep your cap on all night until you go to bed, and I was like, I'm not going to bed, I just want to sit with my cap
now a
on,
nightcap.
like what we did. But we were flying to Houston the next day, so we were into bed pretty early. There wasn't anything on after the game, so
Let's rewind the clock right back, go way, way, way back to the very beginning of your rugby journey. How did it all start for you?
I did one rugby session when I was 7. I went with George Horn actually along to Howe Fife. Just like I can't remember why. I was with another friend.
Were you friends with George?
Yeah, I've known George since I was about 3 years old. Hazel was my tennis coach when I was a kid.
His mum.
Yeah, so known George pretty much all my life. But another friend of mine who was in the same rugby team as George, I'd been staying at his house or something, so we went on the Sunday. I did one rugby session, and then it was about a year later that I started at Madraskals, and that was me kind of from there. Loved it. My old man did the minis coaching for our year, because the guy who was originally doing it then stopped doing it, so he stepped in and coached us all the way through primary school. And then when I finished primary school, went to Madras College in St Andrews, played rugby there and played for the club team as well. And then got my scholarship to Strathallan.
Did you play other sports as well?
Yeah, as many as I could. My 3 kind of main sports were rugby, cricket and judo. Judo was probably the one that, alongside rugby, was my main one as I was kind of growing up. That
explains a lot about some of your moves on the pitch, to be fair.
And then cricket was kind of more when I went to Strathallan. That was kind of my summer sport.
You were competing pretty well at judo as well, though, wasn't there? There was national representation and stuff, wasn't there?
Yeah, I was still quite young before we did any kind of cadet stuff, but I was kind of in that kind of development stage. I'd won a couple tournaments and stuff, like a couple of Scottish championships. Was second.
At what age would that be?
That would have been like 12, 12 years old, maybe a wee bit younger. And then.
And would you train for that? Obviously, we're on about the flexibility, the strength, the core strength. Were you training quite seriously for that? Judo help later on?
When I was doing the most judo, I was training maybe like 3 times a week. So like often like we'd have our session in St Andrews, I'd do one in Cooper, and then sometimes I'd come through to Edinburgh actually and train in Trinent or at Ratho. We'd do like the run. So even some weeks we'd do 4 sessions.
A key theme with that for a lot of successful athletes and in particular rugby players that you speak to, they have had a lot of access to different sports early on. And if you get somebody like Andy Boyd on this, he's huge on that idea of playing as many sports as you can when you're younger. Is that something that you'd subscribe to? Yeah,
definitely. I think it breeds different skill sets. So cricket, like your hand-eye, for like softer skills in the game. Judo, for me, the biggest thing has probably been injury prevention. I think like knowing how to fall when you're kind of in a compromising position, like get yourself into a place where you can kind of get yourself out of a bit of bother. Being able to kind of be reasonably flexible in around the breakdown and stuff like that, and knowing how to move your body like and manipulate other people as well has probably been the main thing for me in terms of like contact skills. But yeah, and being able to enjoy sport as well. Like often, if you become really focused on one thing, like it's really easy to lose love for it. Like I think I saw that with guys early on in my rugby career when they had nothing away from rugby. Like if it wasn't going to plan, like they fell out of love with the game. Whereas like I've always kind of, with the kids coming young and stuff, like I've always had something away from the game that's meant that I've been able to kind of maintain that love because I've got other stuff going on. So I think when you're younger, other sports probably did that for me.
Did you play other sports as well?
Yeah, everything. Same. We just basically got thrown out the house to play as many sports as possible every summer holidays. Not to a massively, it was competitive, but not regional representation or anything. You just played everything.
It's
Whatever's
fun,
on the TV, like generally whatever's on the TV inspired you to do, that exercise. But like it was just being out the door. And I still maintain like a lot of the understanding and techniques you get from all sports contribute and shape your rugby career. Absolutely, I think it's really important, and it's for fun as well, isn't it? And just as Jamie said, he ended up at rugby because of your mate, friends going along. It's just how you grow up.
Then a wee bit later, you're heading towards your 50th cap.
Well, with your mate as well.
Well, not that much.
With the same mate.
I know.
Yeah.
But before then, and we were talking this before, you signed professional straight out of school at 2014.
Yep.
You didn't go into academy. You didn't. Do any of that. It was straight from school, straight as a pro athlete. Were you the first? Maybe you and Blair.
You must have been.
Blair was a year after me. I was, I think, the first since Barks. Barks had done it.
Yeah. And was that a pressure, or was it just taking your stride sort of stuff?
It was a strange one. So I'd kind of all the way through up, being from Cali and stuff. You were aligned to Glasgow back then, and it was a choice of academy at Glasgow or full-time at Edinburgh. Solly had offered me full-time at Edinburgh. They kind of had pulled me in and said like, look, we want you to come here. I know it's against the norm, but we think you could play, and we think you could basically skip the academy type thing, which was cool. And as a 17-year-old kid, you're like, oh yeah, great. Sounds good.
Physical stuff.
And I went in and I trained at Glasgow and I trained at Edinburgh, and I was really like, I was hung up about it for ages.
Yeah, it's a hard decision.
Because like, this probably is going to sound bad now, but as a kid, like I supported Glasgow because that's where I was from. Like in terms of rugby, like your regional alignment was to Glasgow. But I can't remember what it was that changed my mind in the end, and it was just something about, I think, Solly sold my mum, I think, on like looking after me, and I remember I'd been involved with the 20s then as well. My last year at school, went away to the World Cup in New Zealand, and for some training before that, I remember speaking to Jamie Farndale, and I was like, look, I've got this kind of decision to make, like, you're at Edinburgh, like, what's it like? And he was like, mate, it's really, really good, like, the boys are awesome, like, I think you'll get a lot from it. And that was kind of probably what sold me, just that conversation where, like, I probably was taking myself a little bit out of my comfort zone with, like...
Do you feel as if you would need a period in academy in order to compete pro, or was the mindset, listen, I can do this? Because you had a lot of experience, as you say, 20s already.
Yeah.
Or did it come down to maybe the
I think it was probably a little bit of naivety as well. Like, I was going in, and I mean, realistically, at the stage of the academy was it then, you pretty much were a full-time pro. Yeah. Like, you were in training and you were doing all the gym stuff. So for me, it wasn't really that different. It was just the kind of title of it, and you weren't. You were in with the senior boys for the S&C stuff. Yeah.
Was there an expectation, though, that might have been different, a mental shift in terms of how you were approached, not how you approached it?
Potentially. I didn't see it as any different. Like
get you going with it.
Yeah,
either way, it's a job, isn't
like you maybe like you've got to live up to a bit, but then probably that's the challenge that you want to take on. And like I was sold on like being able to play, and I think I ended up playing once that year, so it didn't really matter.
Then can you remember who was the squad members then?
Yeah, so like Dave Denton, but then he left at the start of the following year. Like Roddy Grant, Mike Coleman, Rambo was kind of transitioning at that point. Mish was still there.
Was Bill there yet?
No, Bill came like a couple of years later. Right. Thomas Leonardi. Oh, yeah. Remember Thomas Leonardi? Who else? Mike Coleman. Yeah,
so quite a lot of senior.
Yeah, and Mike was like captain and stuff like that. So there was a few senior. Cornell. Let's not forget Cornell. Like he was awesome.
There is one thing that you do factor in through that jump from school to going straight into a senior squad is, especially as a forward, is that physical difference. Like you're no longer playing schoolboy rugby. You're into senior rugby, and the physicality is surely very different. Yeah,
massively. And I played like a little bit of senior rugby for while I was still at school. Like me, George, and a couple of other guys went off and played because school rugby for us finished at Christmas time. So for us to keep kind of on it, we went and played club rugby, senior club rugby after Christmas. But obviously that's like Cali 1 or National 2 or whatever it was at the time. You're still playing against men, but it's not professional men. So like again, that was a big step up, and I'd played like 20s and I felt like I'd held my own. But yeah, there was a couple of training sessions where I got a few like Cornell and Mish used to remind me every so often. You cocky little kid, we're gonna give you one. Respect. But yeah, I think I felt like reasonably comfortable in that. The only thing that got me at the start was coming in like really cold to pre-season. Like I'd been on my last, so it was like I'd finished 6 years at school and had my summer holiday.
You'd had that holiday, hadn't you?
Yeah, and I went away. Well, no, I didn't actually go on a proper lads holiday, because I've been away on the Junior World Cup, so I didn't get that. But I was like away on holiday with Millie and her family, like had done like minimal running and anything like that, and basically got dropped into like week 7 of pre-season at Edinburgh, and they were like, "You're straight in, no bleeding you in." So like I actually end up passing out day 1. Didn't finish the session, so we did like at the time we were doing these like shuttle runs, like 22 and back, sets of 10, and I think because it was week 7 we were up to 8 shuttles, 8 sets of 10 shuttles, and like by the 8th one I was burst because I'd gone out really hot, being like, oh yeah, I'm usually pretty fit, and then we were walking over to on the old 4G at Murrayfield to go and do a strongman, and I just remember like getting a bit dizzy and then woke up with my head in a bucket. So, day one pro rugby.
It can only get better after that. That's it. Yeah, you mentioned that you didn't play a huge amount initially, but you did play a big part. Was it for Heriots?
Yeah.
Won the title 2015. That would have been almost an important stepping stone, an important advance from that little bit of senior rugby we've had before breaking into the national team, the Edinburgh team. What was it taking that season?
Yeah, it was awesome. I think I ended up playing about 12 games or something for Hertz that year. Really good club. We played like, it was like wide. Yeah,
Phil
really
Smith
good
coaching.
Rugby. Phil Smith coaching. A really good group. Like I think it was me, George Turner played that year. And yeah, just really enjoyed it. And it was like, I think it was probably a nice bridging gap for me between like coming out of school, having played a little bit of senior rugby, 20s, playing in the Prem and feeling like
you could almost dominate it a wee
bit. But like probably one of the better players, and felt like confident in myself, like got my confidence up there that when I could transition into pro rugby that like I could contribute. And
it almost gives you that academy alignment as well, doesn't it? That experience that you could have got at Glasgow, you're then also getting that there where you're
and like I was training on a Thursday night, but having trained throughout the week with Edinburgh, and like there was a really good bunch of lads and they were pretty welcoming to me. I think it probably would have made a challenge for some of them, maybe like coming in 17-year-old kid like and basically straight into play where these guys are established at the club, but they were all really great with me. And yeah, we ended up winning the league, as I like to remind JD of every so often.
He was coaching Melrose.
He was. Still talk about it.
He won't take that particular well.
No, I don't think he's ever watched it. He's never watched the game back.
It was the last minute. It was the last play of the game try, wasn't it?
I'll let you tell him what happened.
Well, he broke the line and offloaded, and Jason Hill scored.
Jason Hill scored.
I think. Way back when.
I love the fact that you still remember it though. This is what Mossy does. He just has a recall knowledge.
Some things. Forget other things. But I was thinking, because I was looking a wee bit at your, the last few years, and from 2014 when you signed professional, I didn't realise it was such a long period until you got your first cap in 2018.
Yeah.
And you played almost 50 games, obviously that season with Heriots, and then you'd almost 50 games with Edinburgh before getting capped. Did that seem like a long period, or did it seem like, I don't know, just
I think
natural?
Yes and no. I think there was probably like the first 3 years of me being professional, I played 20s.
Yeah.
So there was only 1 year where I hadn't played 20s, and I hadn't played for Scotland, where I had like a full pre-season with Edinburgh. So I mean, it didn't feel like a long time. I think there was maybe times where I felt like I maybe had done enough to get maybe a call up. But then, as we know, like the back row's always been really strong for Scotland. And like I was just biding my time. And when I got given the opportunity to go on the last America tour, like it was awesome.
How did that come about? Was it a call? How did it?
I think it was a call. I can't really remember it.
Going back a bit.
I remember like being buzzing, obviously, but
was it one that you were targeting? Obviously, it was a call that you would have been targeting. You want to be in a Scotland setup.
Yeah.
So how talk us around those emotions at that time?
I had like really probably naively when I signed, I'd set myself a goal of like trying to play for Scotland before I was 20, and I hadn't done that, and I was like always kind of targeting it. And like I think that was probably unrealistic at the time. But me, like I say, naively had said that. But yeah, like I was really targeting that at the time, and was pretty excited. I felt like I'd been playing some really good rugby at the time, and hadn't really given them an option not to take me.
Post Alliance year and pre-World Cup year as well.
Yes.
2019. So it kind
World
of follows a
Cup in
trend,
between,
maybe, of not a development tour, but an opportunity that you can almost mark and say, listen, I'm going after this. A realistic goal, as you say, and then get in there and get on with it. Did the period between your first cap in 2018, I know jumping on a wee bit, but the World Cup in 2019 where you really came to the fore, and that must have felt like a blink of an eye.
Yeah, that was cool. And even after that, like I felt there was probably after the World Cup, I didn't miss a game for like 10 or 11 games for Scotland or something. So that like first
quick transition from where you were a year
like
prior.
And I loved it. Like I was awesome. Like I loved playing. I loved. I say like past tense. I loved playing for Scotland, and like that was just like it was the time of my life. It was awesome.
Quite angry in that Japan.
I don't know what you're talking about. Don't know what you're talking about.
You came to the floor. Who's this guy?
It was just playing with a little bit of edge.
My favourite ever Jamie Ritchie quote is, "I won't apologise for being abrasive and a bit aggressive at times on the field."
When was that from?
Quite recently, actually.
Yeah.
But it's the absolute opposite of who you are. And if you're lucky enough to know you, Jamie, that's not at all how you are as a person. So it's so fascinating that you've got that ability where you get hungry in the pitch.
I think it's probably just like a bit of competitiveness. Sometimes you need to go to that place. Like it's sad, not sad, but the way the game is, like you need to get yourself there, otherwise you're gonna either like not play as well, or like you get caught up in like, oh, this is a bit intense. Whereas if you bring the intensity, then kind of one of those ones. And I've always been one for like if your mates are like, sometimes you need a little bit of someone needs to do it, and I'm quite happy to do it.
The thing is, everybody else is in that state.
Yes, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So like as we sit here, hopefully none of us are in that state, but if you take the field in international rugby, like you'll be left behind if you don't have that mindset.
It's also safer, isn't it?
And there's so many things at play when you're out there. Like you're tired, which never helps. And then like sometimes you see things one way that might be completely different, and you're like, "Whoa, what's happened there?" Like, and you lose your head that you think someone's trying to hurt someone else, but they maybe haven't. But just because you're in that place, you're like, "Well, why are you doing that to my mate?" type thing.
Do you climb down straight away after a game?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like instant as soon as the final whistle. Oh, good game, lads. Is it? Is it? I mean, how does your post match look?
Tired. Yeah, I think It really probably depends how the game's gone, to be honest. But yeah, like it's usually pretty like, right, we're done now. You can kind of relax.
46 starts in 49 caps so far. That's an impressive statistics. And when you look at those 49 games that you've had, from game 1 to what's coming up to be your 50th cap for Scotland, what do you feel you've learned about yourself?
Don't know. I honestly don't know. Probably like that I am able to compete at a really high level. I think like there's always things that play out in your head, and throughout my career, like there's always been things that I'm like, oh well, I've not got that someone else has got. But like I think once you reach a certain stage in your career, you start looking at all the things you do have rather than what you don't. And I think for me, that's probably what I've learned throughout those kind of 49 caps is like I've got strengths that other people don't, that have allowed me to be in this position, and like lean on them, don't lean on the things you're not good at.
You've just been named Turnover King, URC Turnover King, in a season which for you personally could be considered to have been quite challenging in a lot of ways. How are you reflecting on the season that you've had?
Like I'm really like the Edinburgh stuff, like awesome. Like obviously the World Cup didn't go to plan, and personally like was really frustrated with injury stuff, like just little niggles that kept me out of like I was off before half time in 2 of the games. Especially I think coming off the back of 2019 where I felt like I played really well, and like that was like when I kind of not burst onto the scene, but like I came on and like showed that I was like an international quality player. I think obviously going into the World Cup being captain, I was like, right, I'm going to go and show them why. And then I just felt like I didn't really get that chance to do it because of those injuries. And but yeah, like really chuffed with how I played for Edinburgh this year. And then obviously during the Six Nations was just one of those things. Like I think that you're talking about those 46 starts and 3 off the bench. I think most of those games I feel like I was first choice from when I made my first cap. Well, probably not well, certainly not for my second cap because I was on the bench for Fraser Brown, who's playing 7 as hooker. But after that, I think I might have been first choice. From whenever it was, Wales against Scotland, the first Doddy Cup game, or the first Doddy Weir Cup game. Like I'd been, if I wasn't being like, it wasn't like a rotation thing, or I wasn't injured, like I was in the team until the France game, the Six Nations. So like for me, like kind of obviously like you never expect to be picked, but you get a little bit used to it. And for me, it was a different challenge when we were in here, and I'm proud of how I dealt with it. Like obviously the frustration and things come into play when you obviously want to play and things don't go to plan, like and the team doesn't win and you're like, oh, I feel I could have contributed, but like all you can do is be in control of yourself. Like unfortunately rugby is subjective, like it's up to other people. Sometimes like your destiny is in other people's hands, and for me all I can do is train as hard as I can, contribute to the team as well as I can, and when I get the opportunity to play as well as I can. And I feel like whenever I've done that well for Edinburgh this year, and when I played for Scotland in the Six Nations, I feel like I did that too. So, and
that mindset's named you Turnover King, but also put you in, starting 15 for Gaitch's Lions team if he was going to be picking one at the moment. Yes, it did. Oh, so when you look at that season, and I think a lot of fans
bring him back
would be saying, and there you go, and that's how it does, how it's done. So
URC Elite 15 as well.
Yeah, and the URC Elite
Battle
15.
What is the Elite 15?
That's the pick of the pick,
the pick
Jamie.
Of the URC. Basically, the team of the season for URC picked by journalists and pundits, and here in the back row with Erlich Lowe and Cameron Hannigan. So that's got to just sort of finishing off that sort of theme, I suppose. That's surely got to feel nice as well to some degree after when you look at the headlines have looked at in the other direction at times this season, and
to have this now, knowing how much work you've put in and you've just got your head down, you've had that mental challenge, as you said, of just doing your job and getting on with it. It must be quite a nice way, despite Edinburgh's situation, to round your own season off that way.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the biggest thing for me, like I kind of said, is that so long as I feel comfortable with the effort that I've put in, then there's nothing really else. Like, unfortunately, like the media and other things that can be like super fickle. Like that's just the way it is. Like it can be narratives that are out with your control or not necessarily like 100% educated. And I think for me, like, yes, that stuff's really nice, but the support of my teammates, coaches, family, and like the kind of reaction that they've had to like the improved performance that I feel like I've given it this season is probably more important. Like that stuff's really nice. Like I've got my wee Turnover King trophy. That's cool.
Did you get an actual trophy?
Yeah. So
do you turn
like,
it over every now and again?
And then like
Look
for
at
like the
me,
Edinburgh thing, like, and do you know what? I'm really glad that the kids get to see these things, because they have seen like when I've been disappointed at home, where they're like, "Oh, Daddy, you're not playing this week." I'm like, "Yeah, it's just part of it." But they've also seen like when you tell they don't necessarily see me working hard at work, but you tell them like, "Look, Daddy's trying really hard to get back in to the team and stuff like that," and then they see the things like the Turnover King Award, the Edinburgh Trophy for Play of the Season, like they see the Player of the Month stuff from April, and like I think that's the bit that's a bit more important to me, like them being able to see that and then like feeling proud of it, rather than it being like, oh, everyone like Instagram sees that I'm on the URC elite team, like really cool, like super proud and privileged to be in it, but my kids aren't on Instagram. So
it's also like a really important lesson, as you've already said, that as harsh as it sounds, it's just a really good example of what professional international rugby is. Like if you take the contrasting emotions from 2019 World Cup to 2023 World Cup, that's the rugby in a nutshell, in terms of when you think it's there, it's away. Something happens, there's a negative thing, and the kind of judge of a character is how they respond. And I remember speaking to you about February and saying, "How are you?" And you were like, "Yeah, fine." I've did something, and I remember you saying, just back in the Edinburgh session, you just said, "Listen, it's a position I've not been in that often, but I'll just get on it and deal with it." It was a real matter of fact, but it is like I think everybody will go through this, and I know we're talking to you, but it's like
not everybody will have.
Yeah, I mean like, that's something else I was going to say.
Deal with it.
I think that's something else I was going to say. Like my career, like has been a reasonably smooth ride. Yeah. And, like I've been really lucky, like touch wood, with injuries and with getting picked and stuff like that, and like a little bit of a setback, like you don't get picked for a couple of games in the Six Nations, like you're still involved, like you've still played 49 games. Like I'm not sitting here being like scraping for a paycheck, do you know what I mean? Like it's a little bump in the road, like you just got to respond.
Well, some big highlights in those 49 games so far. Can you pick out any?
Getting punched in the face.
Oh,
yeah.
That wasn't a highlight. Was it sore?
Metal cheek, mate. It's fine.
You've got a metal cheek.
Metal
I
cheek.
got a metal cheek, but if I ever got punched, it was sore.
Which one is it?
It is left cheek. Yeah. The one, if you ever notice, if I squint, this eye doesn't actually shut up well, so it looks a bit like.
I'm the same.
Well, I mean, at least you never need to get to injectables to keep yourself looking young.
Highlights.
Right side.
Highlights.
By the way, going back to that, you're on about the stuff your kids see and how powerful it is to watch it. Have you got a photo of that in the house?
No, I don't. But
did they see it?
Did they see it?
They were pretty young. Yeah. Oscar maybe just started school or was about to start school.
He'll be proud.
So like he has had it brought up, but I don't know if they may have seen it, they may not.
Did you
but like people talk about it. Like,
yeah, of course. We're talking about it. Did you feel it at the time, or was it one of those adrenaline moments that you didn't notice the damage until you looked in the mirror?
Yeah,
or the
felt
doc,
it.
The doc looked at you.
Definitely felt it. It was just one of those weird ones, like in a game you never, like nowadays you never expect that someone's just gonna like, get up and bang you in the face. Like, but I obviously like ran into, because we were talking about like, I think it was Nick Haining was in a bit of like pushing and shoving, and I just ran in, like trap push somebody, fell over, somebody picked me up, and then next minute you get smacked in the face. And I'm like, whoa. And then I think it was like Vakatawa or something, then tackles me to the floor, and I've got Mohamed Hawass, the guy who's hit me, like by the collar, so I try and pull him down with me, and I'm like, right, what did I do here?
Laws of physics aren't going to...
Is he going to hit me again? If he's going to hit me again, I should probably just try and bring him as close to me as possible so he can't get a swing on me. Or I start swinging back. And I'm like, if I get swing back, then I'm going to get red carded as well. So just like pull him in as tight as you can so he can't get another shot on you.
In for cuddles and then hope it doesn't.
Yeah, and then it kind of all just like breaks up. And then...
Did he say sorry?
No. And then we all get up and I'm like, you need to watch the video. Yeah. Like, because I've just been smacked in the face.
So highlights, other than that?
Highlights.
I can't believe that was your answer.
I've only scored one try, so that...
Fiji?
To be
Fiji,
fair...
first game at Murrayfield.
It wasn't necessarily the bonniest of tries, but listen, it went over. I thought it was a work of art once it go over.
Well, it was actually, I touched the bottom of the post. It's the knowledge of the law.
There you go.
Highlights, I don't know, like loads of them. Probably like broad brushstroke ones, like winning away in Paris during COVID, big one. Winning down Twickenham during COVID, big one.
Relationship with Kathy and Dodie.
Yeah, the New Zealand game was probably like bigger than rugby for me. That one, that's like just like a life highlight. Like I'm so like I remember writing to them both after the game, be like, I'm just so like proud and privileged that like I could be a part of that moment with you both. Like still keep a little bit in touch with Kathy now, and just like what an experience like that for me. Like I remember I was in the stand for the first New Zealand game when he took the ball on back in 2017. I remember being in the stand for that, and like fast forward how many years later, like being able to kind of like tell him what we felt about him and like see them all at the time, like something that's pretty awesome. Yeah, you like nailed it. That biggest highlight, definitely.
So what's next then?
What's next? Try and get myself back in the team, I think.
Well, you've made it very difficult not to at this point.
Obviously a potential 50th cap, which would be really cool. Hopefully a few more afterwards. I think, like for me now, like probably like just enjoying every opportunity I get to play for Scotland. Probably now I'm comfortable in myself that if I'm not picked, I am able to react to it really well. So and contribute like whatever come what may.
So of course, you know, there's a decent run of tests this year. If we go back to post Six Nations, we've now obviously got the current run in the summer, and then into the autumn there's 4 back-to-back, week on week. That's always a fun schedule for all involved at Scottish Gas Murrayfield, but also for the players. That's an intense schedule, and then it's into the 3 home games again for the Guinness Six Nations. What are your thoughts on this year?
Really exciting. I think like loads of test rugby, which is good, and like massive opportunity obviously for the guys going on the tour in the summer to put their hand up for selection. Like obviously over the last couple of years the squad's been pretty well established, but like a lot of new faces coming in for the summer, so it'll be really interesting to see who puts their hands up on this tour, and then hopefully be pretty competitive in November and into the Six Nations. But I think we've got a big challenge ahead. Like obviously some big teams coming in November, and then into the Six Nations where we weren't as far ahead as we felt we should have been this year. So I think next year's a big one.
It's a big opportunity. There's a big opportunity for a lot of players, Jamie included, for playing well for your obviously on tour, but then for your clubs as well. The URC season starts earlier than it did, obviously, because of the delayed start for Rugby World Cup last year. So the games will come thick and fast in URC. I mean, Edinburgh's opening 2 or 3 games, or Leinster at home and on the road to South Africa. So there has to be an element of hitting the ground running there, and the 4 tests, obviously in November, and then it falls into that really competitive Derby season, Six Nations.
Oh, I'm so excited.
There's a Lions carrot at the end of the season for players. There's a real good opportunity starting now, really through Test rugby and your domestic rugby, to lay marker for what will be could be a really special season.
When we look at the 4 tests in the autumn, there's a very, very diverse mix of sides that you're going up against the world champions, going up against Portugal. We've also got Fiji and Australia bookending that spell as well. I'm excited for that. As a Scotland fan, it's a real test of all types of opposition.
Yeah, massively. Like say the challenge of playing in South Africa again, probably after the game in the World Cup where we felt we didn't put our best foot forward, so massive chance for us to go up against them and try and get a win at Murrayfield, which would be awesome. And then, yeah, like you say, kind of a real broad spectrum of different opposition. Like, I don't really know what to expect from Portugal. Obviously, they played well in the World Cup, and Fiji nearly made a semi-final of the World Cup, and Australia are always a challenge. So I think for us, yeah, like massive
rugby,
big few games coming up.
That's why it's called test matches, because you're tested physically, emotionally, you're tested tactically, and add to that not only the different styles of play you're going to face, again, you have to adapt in the moment, and it's really good in the team's development with potentially younger players or newer players being exposed to Scotland over a summer tour, just to learn and understand what the test is in that moment ahead of you, whether it's at home, whether it's away, whether it's a World Champions, whether it's Portugal, or whether it's Six Nations. So all vital parts of experience for players to develop it, for the national team to develop as a whole.
Look, ahead of your 50th cap, what's your words of wisdom, I suppose, to the lads that are on their first, their second, who are yet to have their first cap? What do you say to them?
Like, do what got you there. Like, you're in a national team squad. Like, you're here for a reason. Like, do what got you here, and then like add the bits of your game that people are like saying like, oh, work on this, work on that. Add the little bits of your game, but the big broad brushstroke stuff that got you into this position, like those are the things you lean on. Like, often we talk about doing work-ons and like what do you need to be better at, but like often the things that get you to somewhere is the things you need to be equally as focused on. We said
this a number of times. Like, to become a better player, this sounds negative, but it's not meant to be. But your errors have to be less bad, because you've got the quality and the opportunity and the standability that your highs and your good bits are really, really good. So to be more consistent, sometimes you just have to, try and limit your errors and make them less bad. And because the ability of showing to be involved in the squad, be selected for squad's good enough for you to be there. So just make sure you're consistent. And sometimes I know it sounds ridiculous again, but sometimes it's one of the easier games you'll play, because you step up at a test arena, everybody does their job really well, so you focus on doing your job really well, rather than having to pick up one or two other things and overthink or overcompensate. It'll pass in a flash, and you might actually get to the end and think, well, that wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, because you have to do your bit really well. On that, like, I was again thinking about things, and I'm going to ask you, have you always felt like an experienced player? Because you, to me, like, I've always seen you as an experienced player, even although you gain a first cap, you're involved, single-digit caps, whatever. But I've always seen you as a leader, and I've always seen you as an experienced player. Have you ever felt like a young player? And if so, who was it that you learned off, and who you looked up to? Because loads of guys will look up to you.
Yeah,
you share that, your experiences with the younger players really well. Did you ever feel like a young player?
Yeah, definitely. Like, first couple of years at Edinburgh, felt young, but then
in the national side.
Yeah, as well. Like, maybe, I don't know, it's hard to say. I think maybe up until the World Cup, probably felt like a young
23
World Cup. No, 19.
19
World Cup. Probably
so most
felt
of your
like
career,
and do you know what? I think that comes with like perception around like I had to be grown up at 19. Like I had a kid, and like I wasn't out doing all the other stuff where you do when you're young, or like you have to become pretty like a really functioning adult when you have kids. And for me, like, that probably changed my kind of demeanor and the perception of me around the place. That, like, yeah, you're maybe a little bit older, so I guess that probably feeds into everything. And like it,
but you've
reasonably articulate, understand the game pretty well. So like I think that's probably comes out with that.
Were you like that before you had children? Because I know what Lucy's getting at.
It's been that long.
You just. I think the thing about you, Jamie, is you are. If you were to try and define what a leader looks and acts like, that's very much you are the embodiment of that.
Very kind.
And I'm wondering what you were like as a teenager, where you don't strike me as somebody who's climbing out of windows to.
Well, there's actually a story of me climbing out a window at school.
Was that a set-up? Did you back that?
I didn't think anyone knew about that. That was really young. I was maybe 13. No, I don't know, is the honest answer. I think maybe, but again, I genuinely can't remember. Like I've like one thing I've tried to do throughout my career is just try and be myself.
Yeah. Who did you look up to?
Some of that's maybe needed tweaking at times, but
who did you look up to though? Like in the squad.
When I first came into
I see
Edinburgh,
a big, well, just Edinburgh or the national team, because I see you being really influential in those around you, and they might not even be that much younger than you. If you don't age, but was there
your peers as well?
Yeah,
was
there?
So
was there
at
Edinburgh,
like so when I first came into Edinburgh, I sat next to Mike Coleman.
Yeah.
So he was captain at the time and quite like experienced, like older head, and looked up to him quite a lot. Looked up to Roddy. Like I remember, like the biggest thing that kind of Roddy imparted on me is I remember defending next to him, like when we were training, and like just the amount of chat he'd give you. He'd tell you what he was doing. He'd tell you what you needed to do, and like I just felt so comfortable. And I'm like, right, if I can replicate that, like even 2/3 as good, like I'm gonna help someone next to me.
So the communication,
so the constant communication for that kind of thing. So that was probably the biggest thing, and then Rambo and Gilco. Still, and like Gilco, they're both like they're two of my best mates now, but I can't remember when Rams left last year. Like I couldn't keep myself together, like trying to explain like how much he meant to me, and like
it's not like you.
I know, like yeah, I'm real bad for like getting up on stage and giving myself a wee cry, but so Rams for me, like kind of when you're talking about that leadership part and how he like has influence and effect on other people, and how he kind of just understands what and when to say at the right time, like huge. Like if I have half the ability to be able to do that he does, that would be cool. And Gilco, just that constant like stoicism and like giving back to whatever team he's involved in. Like he's like just always giving, and like always team first. And I think those two probably the biggest influences for me in my career, like peer wise, on how you would like contribute to kind of to a group of people.
Speaking about giving, in a slightly different context, you just won SBS Scottish Building Society Player of the Month awards, and you gave that money to charity. You gave the prize.
Well, I don't think there was an option to keep it.
Was it right?
But yes, I gave
beautifully
it away
written. Then I was like,
no.
Like, does he need the extra?
So that's kind of so whenever you get nominated for Player of the Month at Edinburgh, basically you nominate a charity that the £500 will get donated to, and because I won in April, I got to donate. So I chose Ronald McDonald House, Edinburgh, which the Ronald McDonald charity is one that's really close to our family and our family's hearts. They looked after us at a pretty difficult time, so it was a good opportunity for me to kind of give a little bit back to them. And I think apparently that £500 will keep a family close to their child who is in the hospital for 2 weeks. So I'm glad that we could do that.
The last thing I want to do is ask you about life after rugby, because we are so far away from that. But
no, not that far. We're closer than we were, however, 10 years ago. That's when I started, because that was 10 years ago when I signed.
But I am going to ask you. But what do you, you're talking there about what you've learned from other players. Yeah. Is coaching something that you would find enjoyment in the future, do you think? Is that an avenue? I'm not asking you to pin your hat to it now, but
do you know what, Caroline? Like I spend a lot of my time thinking about what I'm going to do after rugby, like a lot of time. And like coaching is something that I think I probably would enjoy and maybe be quite good at, but it's not something that's on my radar, to be honest. Like don't get me wrong, I love rugby and I love helping kids, and I definitely will do some sort of coaching, whether that's like similar to what you do, Mossy, like a little bit of specialist skills stuff, or like come in and help guys who probably need it. But I honestly don't think I'd want to be a professional coach. I think when I finish playing professional rugby, like I want to go and be able to enjoy it after that, and be able to look at it completely away from being in the know, or looking at it without your kind of like hat on, like seeing what.
I don't think you can do that.
But we'll see. Like, we could be sat here in
I'm going to ask
a few years' time and be like, I told you so. But I think...
No, in terms of like, I think when you've been a player and you've had the success and the responsibility you had, I think it'll be a long period before you can watch a game as a fan.
Yeah.
There'll be a period of analytical view and
well, that's it. My wife plays touch on a Wednesday night, and I'm like,
you don't analyse that.
She's like, I'm like, can you just? And she comes off the pitch like when they're rotating off, like, why don't you just? And she's like, shut up. I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to help. But
I'm here for the crack.
Yeah.
And the Papa John's.
But it's good to know that you do want to be a fan, effectively, when you
and I
finish.
think like it's also like when I retire, it's an opportunity for me to kind of support Mills as well. Like she's given up so much for me throughout my career. Like go and do you. Like the kids will hopefully be a wee bit older. Like who knows where we'll be. And like for me, like hopefully, like obviously I want to go and work and be successful in another area, but I don't really know what that looks like. I'm kind of on that journey of finding out at the moment. So if anyone watching this wants to come and offer me a job, they're more than welcome. But
Here's hoping she has to wait a wee bit longer for her
potentially a wee bit
opportunity.
longer. But like, like supporting Mills, like she's starting her own stuff now and back working and like doing really well, and like for her to have the opportunity that I've had to go and like take her career where she wants to go, like there's something that I'm looking forward to being able to give her. So.
Jamie, we always come away from a chat with you having learned so much and gotten to know you a lot better. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And, from Cap 1 to Cap, what will be 50, thanks for all you've done so far, and very best wishes for the next run of Caps ahead of you.
Thank you very much.
Go well on the Skyscanner Americas tour.